3 true Halloween horror stories that will haunt you forever. Every Halloween, people wear masks to hide their faces, but some masks hide much darker things. Tonight's story isn't about monsters, ghosts, or demons, it's about a man who knocked on the wrong door and met something far worse. So grab your headphones, turn off the lights, and remember, if you hear a knock on your door tonight, maybe it's better not to answer. The knock. October 31st. The kind of night that feels alive, cold winds sweeping through the streets, dead leaves dancing across the cracked pavement, the air heavy with the smell of smoke and pumpkin. In a quiet suburban neighborhood, Evan Miller, 28, locked his apartment door and smiled faintly at the sound of distant laughter. Kids in costumes ran between houses, their candy bags rustling like paper wings. It was the first Halloween since his breakup, and he wasn't in the mood for company, just a quiet night, a few horror movies, and maybe a drink or two. But life, as he was about to learn, doesn't always respect our plans. By 9 p.m., the noise outside had faded. Most of the trick-or-treaters had gone home. Evan sat on the couch, half asleep, the glow of the TV painting his face with flickering blue light. Then came the first knock. A slow, hollow, echoing sound. Evan frowned. "Seriously?" he muttered. "It's late." He checked the time, 9:47 p.m. He got up, grabbed the half-empty candy bowl from the coffee table, and opened the door. No one. Just the empty porch. The wind whistled softly through the trees. He looked left, nothing. Right, nothing. Then, faintly, from across the street, he saw a figure. A tall man, standing perfectly still near the edge of a street lamp's glow. The man wore a dark hooded cloak and an old, cracked pumpkin mask, the kind with a jagged, hand-carved grin. Evan chuckled nervously. "Nice costume, man. You're late for candy." No response. The masked figure tilted his head slightly, just enough to make Evan's stomach tighten. Evan stepped back and closed the door. He tried to laugh it off. Probably some edgy teenager playing around. But that uneasy feeling wouldn't fade. Every sound, the creak of the house, the hum of the fridge, felt amplified. Minutes passed. He turned up the TV volume, trying to drown out his own thoughts. Louder this time. Evan froze. He turned off the TV, the sudden silence pressing down on him like a heavy blanket. The knocking came again, deliberate, patient. He whispered, "Okay, who the hell?" and peeked through the peephole. Nothing. Just darkness. But something caught his eye. A small, folded piece of paper slipped under the door. He hesitated, then bent down and picked it up. The handwriting was jagged, uneven, written in red marker. "You have a beautiful home." Evan's chest tightened. He rushed to the window and looked out again. The man was gone. He checked the locks. Twice. Then he shut off every light except the one in the hallway and sat back down, staring at his reflection in the black TV screen. Midnight crept closer. He tried to convince himself it was a prank, some neighbor's kid having fun. But the feeling of being watched wouldn't go away. Then, a new sound. Not knocking. Scratching. Soft, dragging, so. From the back door this time. Evan grabbed a flashlight and his phone. "If this is some kind of joke," he whispered, "it's not funny anymore." He walked through the kitchen, the beam of light trembling across the walls. The scratching stopped. He waited. Silence. He exhaled, shaky and relieved. "It's nothing. Just a branch." He turned around and froze. There, pressed against the glass of the back door, was the same pumpkin mask, glowing faintly in the moonlight. Evan's body locked up. The masked man stood inches away, breathing fog onto the glass. Evan dropped the flashlight. It rolled across the floor, light spinning wildly. Then the man tapped on the glass, one finger. Evan stumbled backward, heart hammering in his throat. He fumbled for his phone, dialing 911, but the signal was gone. No service. The figure slowly raised his hand and showed him something. A small knife, the blade catching the dim light. Evan ran upstairs, locked himself in the bedroom, and pushed a dresser against the door. For the next hour, he sat in the corner, trying to control his breathing. Every creak of the house felt like footsteps. Every gust of wind sounded like a whisper. Eventually, Exhaustion took over. He sat there, listening, until everything went silent. And then, from the hallway, just outside the door, came a faint thud. A candy bowl hitting the floor. The same one he had left by the couch. He didn't move. Didn't breathe. Just listened. Slow footsteps creaked across the floorboards. One by one, they stopped outside the bedroom. Then, a voice. Almost polite. "You should have given me candy when I knocked." The doorknob twisted once. Twice. Then, silence. Evan sat frozen until the sun came up, afraid to move, afraid to even blink. When morning light finally poured through the window, he gathered the courage to open the door. The living room was empty. The candy bowl was shattered. And on the wall, written in red marker, were 3 words. "See you tonight." The return. Evan didn't sleep that night. He sat in silence until the gray light of morning crept into the room, turning the shadows into shapes again. He wasn't sure what was real anymore. The mask, the voice, the writing on the wall. Maybe it was a prank. Maybe exhaustion had twisted his senses. But the fear was real. The dread was still sitting heavy in his chest, like a cold stone he couldn't cough up. He walked through the house slowly, scanning every corner. The candy bowl was still broken on the floor, shards scattered across the carpet. On the wall, the message remained, "See you tonight." The red ink had smudged slightly where his breath hit it. He touched it with his fingertip, still damp. Evan swallowed hard. "It's a joke," he muttered. "Someone's screwing with me." He spent the next hour checking every window and door, locking them twice, then calling the police. They came around 10 a.m., 2 officers, polite but skeptical. "You said someone was at your window wearing a mask?" one of them asked, notebook open. Evan nodded. "A pumpkin mask." He left a note and came back later. "He was just standing there, staring at me." The officer exchanged a glance with his partner. "Any cameras around your property?" Evan shook his head. "No, I don't have one." They did a walk around, found nothing. No footprints, no evidence of forced entry. Just a man's word and a messy night. "If anything happens again, call us," one officer said. "Halloween brings out weird people. Probably just kids trying to scare you." Evan forced a smile. "Yeah, probably." But as soon as they left, he felt worse. The daylight offered no comfort. He cleaned the wall, swept the glass, made coffee, and sat by the window, staring out at the quiet street. Hours passed. No movement, no noise, nothing out of place. He tried to work on his laptop, tried to distract himself, but his eyes kept darting to the street every few minutes. By evening, the neighborhood was quiet again. Halloween was over, and the decorations were already being pulled down. The wind carried the faint smell of burnt candles and wet leaves. Evan told himself it was over. He locked his doors, turned on a movie, and tried to relax. At 9 p.m., his phone buzzed. A message. A known number. He hesitated before opening it. "You cleaned my writing." His stomach dropped. He stared at the message, frozen. Then another one arrived. "I told you I'd see you tonight." He ran to the front door and checked the locks again. Still secure. Then the back door to the windows, locked. He turned on every light in the house. The phone buzzed again. "Look outside." Evan's heart pounded so hard he could barely breathe. He stepped toward the living room window and pulled the curtain aside. Nothing. Just the quiet street, still and empty. He exhaled shakily, forcing a weak laugh. "You're not getting in my head," he whispered. "Not tonight." Then, he noticed something. Across the street, where the old street lamp flickered, something hung from the post. A small shape swaying gently in the breeze. He squinted, trying to see clearly. It was a jack-o'-lantern, but not like the others. The face wasn't carved. It was drawn on with red marker, the grin wide and crooked. And something was tied beneath it, a piece of paper. Evan grabbed his flashlight, unlocked the door, and stepped outside. The night air was sharp and cold, slicing through his thin shirt. He crossed the street slowly, eyes scanning every direction. The paper flapped softly. He reached up and pulled it down. In the same red handwriting. "You didn't offer me candy, so I took something else." Evan's hands trembled. He turned the paper over, and there, taped to the back, was a photo. It was taken through a window. His living room window. He was in the picture, sitting on his couch, exactly how he had been the night before. He dropped the note and stumbled backward, scanning the shadows. His voice came out barely a whisper. "Who's there?" No answer. Just the wind and the soft rustling of leaves. He ran back inside, locked the door, and shut every curtain. His breathing was uneven, fast. The realization hit him hard. Whoever this was had been watching him, close enough to take that photo. He picked up the phone again, dialed the police, but halfway through he stopped. What could he tell them this time? There was no proof, just another note, another scare. They wouldn't believe him. Instead, he grabbed a kitchen knife and sat in the hallway, facing the door. He didn't move for hours. The night dragged on painfully slow, every minute stretching into an hour. At some point past midnight, exhaustion finally overtook him. His eyes grew heavy, his grip on the knife loosened. Then, a faint creak. He snapped awake. Silence. He listened, straining his ears. Another creak, closer this time. The floorboards just outside the kitchen. He rose quietly, every muscle tight with fear. Another step. Someone was inside. Evan raised the knife, whispering, "Who's there?" No response. Then he saw it, a flicker of movement at the end of the hallway. A shadow slipping past the doorway. He lunged forward, switching on the light, but the hall was empty. The front door was still locked. The windows still shut. He turned back and froze. There, in the middle of the living room, was the pumpkin mask, lying on the floor. No one else. Just the mask. He stared at it, his pulse thundering in his ears. Slowly, he stepped closer, crouching down. The mask was cracked along one side. Old, worn, its inside lined with something sticky and dark. He reached out to lift it, then stopped. Footsteps behind him. He spun around, nothing. When he turned back, the mask was gone. He stumbled backward, dropping the knife. Panic surged through him. He bolted to the bedroom, slammed the door, and locked it. Through the thin wall, he thought he heard breathing. Deep, steady, patient. He pressed his ear to the door. The sound stopped. Seconds passed. Then, from the other side of the door, came a whisper, the same calm, quiet tone as before. "It's rude to shut me out." Evan's scream died in his throat. He backed away, shaking until his legs gave out beneath him. He didn't move again until morning. When he finally opened the door, the house was silent. No sign of the intruder, no broken lock, no trace of the mask. Only a new note waiting at his feet. "Don't bother calling anyone. They never see me." Evan sank to the floor, trembling. For the first time, he realized this wasn't a prank. Whoever the masked man was, he wasn't just watching. He was waiting. And Halloween was only the beginning. The last night. The next few days passed in fragments. Evan barely slept. He stopped going to work, stopped answering calls. Every sound made him jump. The quiet became unbearable, too thick, too deliberate, as if the air itself was listening. He taped over the windows, shoved a chair under the front door handle, and left the lights on 24 hours a day. But no matter what he did, that feeling of being watched never left. Every reflection, in the TV, the glass, even the kettle, seemed to hide a flicker of motion just beyond his line of sight. By the fourth night, he'd stopped pretending to function. He sat at his kitchen table, drinking cold coffee, the knife still within reach. His phone lay on the counter, useless. Every call to the police had ended the same way. A polite visit, no evidence, nothing they could do. He was alone in this. That night, the wind picked up again. Heavy gusts rolling through the neighborhood, carrying the sound of something metallic rattling outside. He tried to ignore it, but then came a soft, deliberate noise. At the back window. Evan's skin went cold. His mind screamed, "Don't move," but his body betrayed him. He turned slowly toward the sound. The curtains were thin. Behind them, a faint outline, tall, still, unmistakable. He gripped the knife tighter. "Go away," he whispered. Silence. Then the tapping started again, this time slower. 1, 2, 3. He pulled the curtain aside in a single motion, but no one was there. Just darkness and wind. His breath came fast, uneven. He backed away, eyes darting. Then he saw it, on the counter beside his phone, another note. He hadn't heard anyone come in, hadn't seen the door move. Yet the note was there. He reached for it with a shaking hand. "It's our anniversary." He stared at the words, confused. His mind scrambled for meaning. Then slowly his stomach dropped. The handwriting, the red ink, the way the letters leaned. He'd seen it before, not just in the other notes. It was familiar. He ran to the hallway closet, yanked out an old shoebox from the top shelf, and dumped it on the floor. Inside were photographs, letters, fragments from his past relationship with Lena, the woman he'd broken up with months ago. There it was, a birthday card she'd written him. The same jagged red ink. The same tilted handwriting. For a long moment, he couldn't breathe. Could it really be her? The thought was absurd. Lena was quiet, withdrawn, not cruel. But as he flipped through more old papers, the connection became undeniable. He sat there trembling, the house deadly quiet except for the faint whine of the wind. Then a voice came from behind him. "You were supposed to miss me." Evan spun around. She was standing at the end of the hallway, Lena. Her hair was tangled, her skin pale as wax. And in her hand she held the cracked pumpkin mask. He stumbled backward. "Lena, what the hell?" She tilted her head, a smile twitching at the corner of her mouth. "You didn't answer when I knocked." Evan's voice was shaking. "You scared me half to death." "That's the point," she said softly. "You don't feel anything unless you're scared. You didn't feel anything when you left me either." He took a step toward her. "This isn't funny. You need help." But the look in her eyes froze him where he stood. It wasn't rage, it was something worse. Certain. She lifted the mask and slid it over her face. "You said you loved Halloween," she whispered through the carved grin. "So I brought it back." Evan turned and ran. He bolted toward the front door, blocked. He fumbled with the chain, his shaking hands slipping. Behind him, her footsteps were slow, measured. He yanked the door open and ran into the street, barefoot, cold air biting at his skin. He sprinted toward the nearest house, pounding on the door. "Help, please." A porch light flicked on, but no one answered. He turned around, the street was empty. No Lena, no mask, nothing. He ran back inside, slammed the door, locked it, and pressed his back against it, gasping for breath. The silence pressed in again, thick and suffocating. Then, from the kitchen, a single sound. The clatter of glass. He edged forward, knife in hand, heart hammering in his chest. The kitchen was empty except for the window, now wide open, the curtains fluttering in the cold wind. On the table, the pumpkin mask sat upright, perfectly still. He didn't move closer. He couldn't, because from inside the mask he could hear breathing. Slow, steady. He backed away, but his legs felt weak, unresponsive. His vision blurred. The walls seemed to close in around him. The last thing he heard was her whisper, close enough to feel the warmth against his ear. "Now you'll never leave again." The lights flickered once, then everything went dark. Morning came quietly. When the neighbors noticed Evan's door hanging open, they called the police. Inside, everything looked untouched. No signs of struggle, no broken furniture, no blood. Only one thing stood out. A jack-o'-lantern sat on the kitchen table, freshly carved, its grin wide and uneven. Inside it, a small candle still flickered weakly, surrounded by melted wax. And on the wall, written above it in neat red letters, "Happy Halloween." No one ever saw Evan again. The police filed the case away under missing person. But every year after that, on October 31st, someone in the neighborhood reported the same thing. A tall figure wearing a cracked pumpkin mask, standing under the street lamp just before midnight, watching the houses. And when they turned away, just for a second, the figure was gone. But sometimes, if you listen closely on Halloween night, you might still hear it. Knock, knock, knock.